I still remember the sound, the phone, ringing past midnight. You never forget a sound like that. I was half asleep, half lost in a dream I don't remember. But when I saw the caller ID, the hospital, something in my chest froze. I answered, and a woman's voice said, "Sir, you need to come right now." That's all it took. No explanations, no details, just those words. In the background, I could hear machines, hurried voices, footsteps, the kind of noise that tells you your life is about to change. I drove through the rain like a madman, barely seeing the road. Every red light felt like an insult. Every second, another piece of my mind breaking off. I didn't pray. I didn't curse. I just drove. When I walked into the ER, the smell hit me first. Antiseptic, cold air, something metallic underneath. People moved around me, but I couldn't hear them. It was like the world had muted itself. A nurse looked up. I must have looked lost because she came right over. I asked for my daughter, and she hesitated just long enough to tell me this was bad. Then she led me down a hallway, white walls, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and stopped at a curtain. She pulled it aside, and I saw her. My daughter, my little girl, the same one I used to carry on my shoulders. I can't describe what I felt, because there isn't a word for it. Fear, rage, guilt. It was everything all at once. I went closer, said her name. She looked up at me, eyes unfocused, barely awake, and then she said something that still echoes in my head to this day. She whispered, "Dad." It was him. I asked who. She hesitated, looked away, then said it. The billionaire's son. And just like that, the whole world went quiet again. I knew exactly who she meant. Everyone in our town did. He was the golden boy, the kind people pointed to when they said, "See, good families raise good kids." I'd seen his face on billboards, charity events, business magazines. But now, that face had a different meaning. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go find him right then, but I couldn't. My daughter needed me there. So I just held her hand, and I promised her, right there in that cold hospital room, that I wouldn't let him get away with it. A detective came in later that night. He asked some questions, took notes, didn't say much. I could tell by the look on his face. He already knew who the boy was. He asked for a statement, said they'd handle it carefully. Carefully. That word still makes my stomach turn, because in their language, carefully means slowly. It means quietly. It means don't make trouble for the rich. I went home that night, sat in the dark, and watched the rain fall outside. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. Dad, it was him. The next morning, the news had already started spinning. An incident involving the son of a prominent family. Allegations still under investigation. Sources claim misunderstanding. They didn't even use my daughter's name. They just called her a young woman, as if she didn't have a life, a heart, a story of her own. When I called the detective for updates, he said they were gathering evidence, but I could hear it in his voice. He was being pulled from above. That's how it works. Money doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't need to threaten. It simply reminds people where their paycheck comes from. Within a week, the lawyers showed up. Polite smiles, expensive suits, and eyes that never blinked. One of them actually said, "Sir, I think we can resolve this quietly." Resolve what? My daughter's trauma? My family's silence? You can't resolve that with a check. I asked if their client had even admitted what happened. They said, "Our client doesn't recall." And that was it. Those 3 words, like a door slamming shut. I started noticing things after that. The detective stopped answering calls. Some neighbors looked away when they saw me. Even my daughter's friends grew distant. Scared, maybe, or told to stay quiet. It's amazing how fast people disappear when truth becomes inconvenient. One night, a black car pulled up outside my house. A man stepped out. He said he represented the family. He told me it would be better for everyone if we let this go, that dragging it through the public would hurt my daughter more than help her. Then he left something on my porch. An envelope. I didn't open it, didn't need to. I knew what was inside. I took it straight to the fireplace and watched it burn. It felt good. For 5 seconds. Then the fear came back, because when powerful people can't buy you, they start finding other ways to silence you. I started recording everything, calls, emails, messages. I kept notes on who said what and when. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The truth was all I had left. Then the threats started a car that followed me home, a job offer that mysteriously disappeared. You start to realize how small you really are, how much of the world is already owned by people who never earned it. But I didn't stop. Couldn't. Every time I thought about quitting, I'd remember that hospital room, the smell, the silence, her voice. Then one day, a journalist reached out. She'd heard about the case, said she wanted to help. I hesitated. You can't trust everyone who says they care. But she wasn't after a headline. She was after the same thing I was. The truth. Together we started putting the pieces out there. Slowly, carefully, not accusations, just facts. And when the truth finally reached the public, the silence broke. People started asking questions, protests, articles, social media campaigns. The family couldn't hide anymore. It wasn't the police who forced them to act. It was the people. Ordinary voices refusing to be quiet. My daughter still doesn't like talking about it, and I don't blame her. She lost more than I'll ever understand. But she knows one thing. Her father didn't give up, and that means something, not just for us, but for everyone watching, because justice doesn't come from power. It comes from persistence. It comes from truth. And sometimes it comes from the quiet voice of a father who refused to be silent. That night changed everything, not because of what happened, but because of what we chose to do after. They say the system is broken. Maybe it is. But sometimes, even broken things can deliver justice if you're stubborn enough to keep fighting. The morning after the story broke, everything changed. For months we'd been living in shadows, whispers, threats, and closed doors. But that morning, the truth had a voice, and the world was finally listening. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, lawyers, people I'd never met. Everyone wanted a statement. But I didn't want to talk. I just wanted justice. The media had a new obsession. Some called it bravery. Others called it rebellion. I called it survival. But with attention comes danger. The same power that tried to bury us wasn't going to give up easily. Within days, the Billionaire'S lawyers filed a lawsuit against us. They claimed defamation, said we were ruining an innocent man's reputation, the same man who'd been protected by silence for so long. It was a cruel twist, the victim's family being dragged into court first. But I didn't back down. If they wanted to fight, they'd get one. The first time I stepped into that courtroom, I felt small. Rows of polished wood, cameras, reporters, and him sitting across the room, calm, untouched. He didn't even look at me. Didn't have to. His confidence was the kind that comes from knowing the system bends for you. But I wasn't alone. Behind me sat people, strangers, who believed in us. People who saw themselves in our fight. That was enough. The trial wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth. The defense tried everything, discrediting witnesses, twisting timelines, drowning us in paperwork. But for every tactic they used, we came back stronger. We had facts, we had consistency, and we had something their money couldn't buy. Sincerity. Every testimony, every piece of evidence, every tear shed in that courtroom. It built something unstoppable. Momentum. One day, during recess, the lead lawyer for their side approached me in the hallway. He didn't smile this time. He just said, "You don't know who you're fighting." I told him, "I do. That's why I'm not stopping." He walked away without another word, and for the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Fear. Weeks turned into months. The story kept spreading. Other voices began coming forward. People who had seen things, heard things, lived through similar pain. And that's when I realized this wasn't just our story anymore. It was a mirror held up to a system that protects privilege over people. Then came the day of the verdict. The courtroom was silent. The judge spoke slowly, reading through pages of words that felt like years of my life. When she finally said the words, "Guilty of obstruction, false testimony, and abuse of power," the world didn't cheer. It sighed, a quiet, trembling sigh, the kind that comes after holding your breath too long. He didn't go to prison that day, but he lost everything money could protect. His father's empire fractured. His name became a headline for all the wrong reasons, and the truth, the one they tried to bury, was out for everyone to see. Months later, my daughter sat with me on a park bench. The sun was out. The world looked normal again, but you could see the distance in her eyes. That quiet kind of healing that takes time. She asked me if it was worth it. All the noise, the threats, the pain. I told her this: justice isn't about winning, sweetheart. It's about making sure no one gets to walk away thinking they're untouchable. She nodded, but didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The silence between us said everything. Sometimes I think about all the people who helped along the way. The journalist, the neighbors who finally spoke up, the strangers who sent messages saying, "Keep going." Each one added a brick to a wall of truth that no amount of money could tear down. And when I see my daughter smile again, even just for a moment, I know we did the right thing. The system isn't perfect. It's slow. It's flawed. But it listens when enough people refuse to stay quiet. Our story became more than a case file. It became proof that silence protects the powerful, but truth empowers the broken. I never wanted fame. I never wanted headlines. All I wanted was for my daughter to know one thing, that her voice mattered. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there heard her story and decided to speak up too. It started with a phone call, a few words that shattered a father's world. But it ended with something stronger, a promise kept. Because when you stand for truth, you don't just fight for your family. You fight for everyone who's ever been told to stay silent. For months I had lived in noise, courtroom chatter, reporters, phones, whispers, footsteps in hallways, then suddenly, silence. The day after the verdict, I woke up expecting another call, another crisis, but none came, just the sound of the wind through the trees and the slow, careful rhythm of my own breathing. For the first time in years, I didn't have to fight anyone. And yet, I didn't know what to do with myself. Justice feels different when you finally have it. It's not fireworks or applause. It's a quiet kind of exhaustion, like finishing a marathon barefoot. You don't celebrate, you just sit there, letting the stillness sink in. My daughter was home by then. She spent most of her days reading, painting, or just sitting by the window watching the world go by. Some days she smiled, some days she didn't. Healing doesn't come in a straight line. It arrives in fragments, one safe breath at a time. I tried to give her space, but part of me was afraid to let her out of my sight. Every time she went for a walk, I'd find myself checking the clock. When she laughed with someone on the phone, I'd listen from the other room just to make sure she sounded all right. Maybe that's what being a parent is. Loving someone so much that you never stop protecting them, even from ghosts that aren't there anymore. It was a Sunday when she sat at the kitchen table and said, "Dad, I've been thinking about going back." She meant school. My chest tightened, half fear, half pride. I nodded, tried to hide my worry, and said, "That's good." She smiled, not the full smile she used to have, just the edge of one. But it was enough. That day felt like a sunrise after a long night. The weeks that followed were slow and peaceful. I started fixing small things around the house. Shelves, lights, the fence out back, little repairs that gave my hands something to do while my mind wandered. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking at the front door, half expecting another knock, another envelope, another storm, but nothing came. I didn't realize how much of my life had been defined by fear until it was gone. And when it left, it took a piece of me with it. The part that didn't know who I was without the fight. One afternoon I walked down to the community center. There was a small notice on the board. Volunteers needed for youth program. I almost walked past it, but something made me stop. A week later I was sitting in a room full of teenagers, listening to them talk about dreams, college, friendships, heartbreaks. Things that felt so far away from courtrooms and hospital rooms. And then it hit me. This was what hope sounded like. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple, ordinary, alive. I kept going back. Every Saturday, same chair, same time. I didn't talk about what happened to us. I just listened, because sometimes the best way to heal is to help someone else feel heard. My daughter noticed the change in me before I did. "You smile more," she said one evening as we ate dinner. I told her I didn't realize it. She laughed, a real laugh this time, and said, "It's nice." That sound filled the room like sunlight. It was the kind of moment you don't take for granted anymore. Months turned into a year. The world moved on. News headlines faded, but our lives, they slowly began to rebuild themselves. My daughter went back to school, then joined a small advocacy group that helped others who had gone through similar things. She never told her story publicly again, but I could tell she was using her pain to light the way for others. And as for me, I kept volunteering, kept repairing, kept learning how to live without waiting for the next disaster. There's a quiet kind of grace that comes after everything's been taken from you. You learn to notice small things again. The way sunlight hits the table, the sound of a clock ticking in a calm room, the comfort of someone breathing softly in the next room. Peace doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments, moments that teach you it's okay to stop surviving and start living again. One night we sat outside in the backyard. The sky was clear, stars scattered like salt over black velvet. She looked up and said, "Do you ever think about him?" I paused before answering. I did, sometimes, but not with anger anymore. "I used to," I said, "a lot. But now, I think about us instead." She nodded, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "That's better," she said softly, and in that moment I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about refusing to let the pain own you anymore. Seasons changed. The house, once filled with echoes, now carried quiet laughter and warmth, family dinners, music, normal life. I still visited the community center every week. One day a young man came up after the session and said, "I saw your story online. You gave me courage to speak up. I didn't know what to say." So I just shook his hand. Sometimes that's enough, knowing that your survival gave someone else a voice. Years later, on the anniversary of that first phone call, I drove back to the hospital. Not for any reason, just to see it again. The building looked the same, but I didn't. I stood outside the emergency room doors, listening to the same hum of machines and voices. It didn't haunt me anymore. It reminded me of how far we'd come. Before leaving, I whispered a quiet thank you. Not to the hospital, not to fate, but to the strength that had carried us through. When I got home, my daughter was sitting at the table with a box of old photos. She smiled and handed me one. A picture of her as a child, sitting on my shoulders, grinning at the camera. "Remember this?" she said. I did. It was from a summer fair. Years before everything happened. We looked so happy, so unaware of how fragile peace could be. She looked at the photo again and said, "I think we're getting back there." I nodded. We are. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. People sometimes ask me what justice felt like. They expect words like victory or closure. But the truth is simpler. Justice, for me, was seeing my daughter laugh again. It was waking up and realizing that the world no longer scared me. It was choosing not to let one act define the rest of our lives. That's justice, not revenge, not punishment, just peace. I still volunteer. She still studies, still speaks, still finds ways to turn her pain into purpose. And me. I sit by the same window every morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. Every day looks different, but the light is always the same. Gentle, steady, new. Sometimes I think back to that night. The phone call, the fear, the chaos. It feels like a lifetime ago. And in some ways it was. Because that man, the one who rushed through the rain, who begged for justice, who didn't know if he could survive another day, he became someone else. Someone stronger. Someone free. If there's one thing I've learned through it all, it's this. The world can take everything from you. Your peace, your comfort, your certainty. But it can never take your choice to begin again. And beginning again. That's the bravest thing you'll ever do. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't winning the fight. It's learning how to live after it.